Hi everyone. Today we're talking about a perspective that I've been thinking about recently, and namely the possibility to understand the four perception functions, so introverted and extroverted intuition, as well as introverted and extroverted sensing, as wings. So I'm basically going to use the analogy of butterfly wings to help you understand the way that I visualize these four functions and basically how we can, understand this in such a way that maybe they become clearer. Because I do hear people questioning a lot whether something is NE or SE, NI or SI, so on and so forth. So I'm aiming to clarify that. Anyway, all about that in the next few minutes. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. And just before I start, I want to remind you guys that I offer coaching sessions, not typing sessions, but coaching sessions aimed at helping you dig deeper into your process of self-awareness and introspection. I'm using a variety of tools. MBTI and Enneagram are part of these tools, but I also use other aspects like communication skills, attachment styles, and more general life coaching techniques. So if you're curious to learn more about that, I'm going to link my website in the description below, so feel free to check it out and set your first discovery call. Anyway, if we get back to the topic of our video today, namely the perception functions as wings, I want to clarify what I mean by that. So let's imagine a butterfly that has these beautiful wings that go into four different directions. So if we look at that, we are also able to notice a center point in the middle of the butterfly, the body. And that is who we are. That is the essence of our minds that exists and works and functions behind and underneath all of these cognitive functions. If we look at the bottom, so the two bottom parts of the wings, we will refer to these as NI and SI. And then if we look at the top part, the top side of the wings, we will notice NE and SE, and we will refer to these as NE and SE. Why? Because the way that I believe these functions work is that they create some sort of symbiosis, all four together. Always, two of these functions are in our ego, in our top four functions, and the other two are in our subconscious or shadow. Unconscious and shadow. So the part that we are not really aware of is represented by the other two, but nonetheless they exist. So the kind of symbiosis that is created by these four functions refers to the fact that each of these four processes has a special talent or has a special strategy. And now we look at the bottom. We have the introverted functions, introverted intuition and introverted sensing, NI and SI. What they both do is that they stabilize. On the top, with NE and SE, the extroverted functions, what they do is they explore. I've been talking about this in some of my previous videos where I compared NI and SI as well as NE and SE, but I'm gonna go back to that idea and say that I believe the introverted functions have the introverted perceiving functions have the responsibility of stabilizing our interpretations of the world, but they do it in different ways. So introverted intuition is the one that stabilizes the abstract, is the one that deals with ideas. It deals with different abstract perspectives and abstract understandings, not necessarily understandings that are directly based on facts or experience or events, but more so connections of possibilities, connections of ideas that, are going on in the back of the mind and that somehow seem to merge together. There are plenty of aspects that kind of support this. In Dario Nardi's book, The Neuroscience of Personality, what we noticed with respect to introverted intuitive types, INFJ and INTJ specifically, but also ENFJ and ENTJ, is that the neocortex, so the surface of the brain, shows a specific pattern when dealing with a novel situation or a novel idea or a novel problem. We notice that the brain works somewhat together, and it looks like the state of flow for these types has the ability to kind of bring together ideas and impressions from a lot of different angles to support the problem solving. Maybe problem solving is not really the best word, but to support the understanding of that novel situation or novel problem. So maybe to translate that, we see the brain merging ideas, merging subjective abstract impressions with the aim to unify something in the abstract. On the other hand, we have introverted sensing that does something similar, but in terms of concrete experience, because sensing, sensory, is a experience-based function, concrete experience-based function. So what introverted sensing does is that it merges together our experiences, things that we've lived, things that have left an impression on us in a physical sense. So maybe, it could be any physical activity that we do, any experience that we engage in, that eventually leaves its mark on us. And it happens to everyone. Every experience that we have leaves its mark on us. It's just a matter of how aware we are of that and how important we believe it to be, depending on our own cognitive biases, depending on our own cognitive function preferences and our type and so on and so forth. So introverted sensing will merge together different sorts of experiences, and not just the experiences per se, but the subjective interpretation of those experiences. Some might call it memory and some might call it, traditional rules. These are often words that we associate with SI. But in my perspective, they all kind of boil down to the same idea, and namely what Jung was mentioning in Psychological Types, the fact that we draw from our experiences, this leaves an impression, and because SI types are so aware of these impressions, they are probably the ones who have, a better memory or a higher chance of being interested in traditions and maintaining things in a certain way because of that attachment to what they perceive to be a relevant impression, a relevant subjective impression. So again, if I am to engage in a bit of transcontextual thinking, or not transcontextual thinking, but to kind of look at the two functions from the outside, what I see is that both NI and SI merge. They go from this unconscious level, or they go from this introverted perception of what is going on inside the self, which represents the bottom of the wings, and then they merge this towards the middle part of the butterfly, towards the center. Now, what do the extroverted functions do? Well, they start from the center, they start from this middle body, and then they extend towards possibilities. Extroverted sensing is the one that engages in concrete experiences, the one that is looking for novelty and chaos in the concrete world by trying out many different things and learning from that, experimenting, enjoying, experiencing. Words that John Beebe often associated with this function, because what SE does is it looks into the world, it opens up the person to concrete physical experiences in order to boost the level of understanding of those concrete experiences, with the aim to eventually really enjoy what one does. So, because NI is feeding these conclusions from the abstract world to SE, SE enables the individual to experience. It enables the individual to learn, to grow by trying things out and by seeing how they feel like from an experimental point of view. That's why we often talk about extroverted sensing in terms of our 5 senses, even though they're not the same thing, but they are connected to each other because our senses enable us to experience the world, and that's what SE relies on. On the other hand, on the other side, we have extroverted intuition, another function that likes exploring and going into the chaos. It enjoys chaos, it thrives in chaos, but rather than concrete chaos, it is more concerned with abstract chaos, with a variety of different possibilities, but not so much physical possibilities and what they mean for the individual on a experimental level, but more so possibilities in the abstract, possibilities in terms of what if, what could happen if, what would happen if, what is another way to look at this, what is another idea that I can use to explain this, what is another perspective that I might allow my mind to open itself to. And we have introverted sensing that is feeding subjective impressions based on concrete experiences. And then we have extroverted intuition that uses these centralized, stabilized experiences in order to create abstract possibilities, in order to look and engage with abstract possibilities, in order to envision, in order to open the mind up. People are aware of half of these functions and the other 2 are supposedly in their shadow. But nonetheless, we all have all of these 4 processes, and in a certain way they all create stability in the mind. They all create a sense of balance. I believe that both extroverted intuition and extroverted sensing can draw inputs from both introverted intuition and introverted sensing, but I also believe that eventually a loop is created. So we have this experimentation in the concrete or in the abstract that comes from SE and that comes from NE, but because of this, the introverted functions also gain more insight. Introverted intuition also gains more insight because SE enables the individual to experiment a lot of different concrete things, and then if it uses that input, it can create even more valid or accurate interpretations or perceptions of the ideas that it was originally dealing with. So you can imagine it like a mechanism that is constantly circling around, looping around, taking information from one side and feeding into the other. And you know, when the butterfly flies, so quote unquote, it is in a state of flow, then all of these 4 functions play a very important role and enable the butterfly to fly. If one of them is not working, if one wing or one side of the wing is not working, then the butterfly cannot fully engage in a sense of flow. So yeah, this is my perception, and this is something I was thinking about a couple of days ago when I was walking and listening to music. Sometimes certain songs open up these ideas, so I really felt like sharing this with you. What do you think? Are there any other ways in which you imagine or visualize these 4 functions? If you do, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thanks a lot for watching this video. Thanks a lot for being with me. See you next week with another video on typology.